Hey folks, my name's Brent with Hillside Solutions, and we are partnered with Aksarben Village to provide you with a really wonderful sustainability program. And so you are here watching this to find out about that, and I'm going to go through all the details. Overview, we're going to talk about what your new sustainability program is, how to recycle and compost right, how it works, and in-house procedures for how to do this within your business. I want to start off with just a myth that most people think about is that trash equals waste. And so the reality in our society is that trash is actually a resource. Okay, so when we take trash and all we do is just bury it in a hole and forget about it, aka a landfill, it's the same thing as taking the money in your pocket, putting that in a hole, burying it, and forgetting about it too. Okay, because all of those things have a value. And when you treat it the right way and you separate it into the right stream and it gets treated, recycled, composted, there's a value to that. Okay? So the solution is, instead of landfilling our waste, we should, as an organization, as individuals, try to go for zero waste. So what's zero waste? So that's essentially 10% or less of your waste goes to the landfill or is burned. Or another way to say that, 90% or more of the trash that you produce is being reduced, reused, recycled, composted. One stat to always keep in mind is that in America, the average person produces 4.3 pounds of trash a day, according to the EPA. Okay? Each one of us in America, 4.3 pounds of trash. So where does that go? So where it goes with you in Aksarben Village, in your trash area where the dumpsters are at, you'll see the dumpsters now have these labels on them, and there's a guide back in that area as well that you can reference on what materials go into what container. And we're going to go through each one of those. So here's a larger view of it. We have mixed recycling, cardboard, glass, compost, and landfill as well. And within the mixed recycling, you can collect certain materials in Hefty energy bags separately, which then can go into the mixed recycling. We'll talk about that as well. So I'm going to introduce another myth. So that is this thing called wish recycling. It's this idea that if you have a recycling program at your house or have dealt with one at work previously, this moment where you're like, is this recyclable? I don't know. I'll just throw it in, and someone on the other end will figure it out. And so the reality of that is that that's called contamination. So if you have like a can of soda, and the aluminum obviously is recyclable, but it still has soda in it, and you just throw it in there, it's a good chance that that stuff is going to get over all the other materials, and when it gets to the recycling sorting center, it will probably just get thrown in the landfill with all those other things that got contaminated with that liquid. So there's a lot of different examples of that. But the point is that if you learn how to recycle right, then things will actually get recycled instead of winding up in the landfill. So we'll talk about that too. So for most people that live in Omaha, if you live in a single family house, you have this green bin program, and that's called single stream recycling. It's really easy because all the traditional recycled materials can just go into that container, and the city takes away and it gets sorted out. But when it comes to commercial, things get a little bit more complicated. As of June 2018, some of the rules have changed about how materials are recycled in Omaha for businesses, not residential. And so there's a supplemental material you can look at, which has a link that goes more into depth than that, so we won't watch this video. But the gist of it is, instead of putting all your materials in one bin, you now separate the cardboard from everything else. Okay? So we'll first talk about the cardboard stream, which you can see here. So this is one of the areas that you can see on the guide in the waste area. And so here's an example as well. Imagine you have an in-house bin dedicated to cardboard. Okay, so, and that's pretty easy. Anything, corrugated cardboard, paperboard, chipboard, cereal boxes, shoe boxes, just what you generally think of as cardboard is cool. You can put it in that stream. You want to make sure you're folding it, because if you're not folding those boxes, they fill up that dumpster quick, and then next thing you have overages and it's a mess back there. So tapes and labels on the cardboard, totally fine, no big deal. If it's wet or soiled cardboard, like think about a pizza box having food stains on it, that isn't recyclable, but it is compostable, and you now have composting available as well. I'll get into that later. So the next stream we want to talk about is mixed recycling. And this one is probably the most complicated out of all of them. Mixed recycling, compromises a lot of your plastics, cartons, paper, aluminum, and metals. And there's also a new program called Energy Bag, which you can opt into. And we'll talk about that as well and more in depth. So the important thing with the mixed stream, with the new rule changes for how commercial businesses recycle, is the big thing is you want to keep in mind no plastic bags in that mixed stream recycling dumpster. Just if you can collect it in a plastic bag, just dump it in to the mixed stream dumpster, and then you can landfill that plastic bag if you want, or energy bag it. So plastics are a bit complicated, so I want you to kind of just slow down, pause, and just take all this in. And then once you sort of ingrain this information, it'll be much easier moving forward. But the traditionally recyclable plastics, like the ones you put in your green bin, the ones that go in the mixed stream that we're providing you, you can think about it as plastics 1, 2, and 5. Okay, and there's 7 different types of plastics. This system was never set up for the everyday consumer like us to understand, but this is what we have to deal with. So, no. Case in point, a lot of the plastic materials that you have, containers like this, have numbers at the bottom. So if you look, you'll see a triangle with arrows, and then on this particular one, the number 5. So as you can see from the slides, 1, 2, and 5 are recyclable. So this would be recyclable. We'll go into other ones that aren't. So plastics 1, 2, and 5. Here is an example of plastics that are recyclable. Okay, aseptic containers, milk cartons, and juice boxes, and things like that. Well, you want to make sure they're empty. You don't want any liquids in the stream of recycling because it ruins other things. Okay, paper. That's why I don't want any liquids, because the paper in there. Generally any type of paper, mail, office paper, grocery bags, things like that. And then aluminum and steel cans. This is going to be for a lot of restaurants. You can see there's food cans in there, and soup cans, and aerosol cans, jar lids, things like that. Make sure they're free of liquids and mostly clean of food. Okay, so that leads me to my next point. So there's this other myth that a lot of people think that all plastics are recyclable. And the truth of the matter is that's not true. Many aren't, okay? And the solution for the ones that aren't recyclable is the Hefty Energy Bag. This is a program that our city was the first in the nation to start. So maybe you've seen some branding and commercials around town. Here's generally what it looks like. It's these orange bags, okay? And so the plastics I talked about, 1, 2, and 5 are recyclable, but then there was those other numbers that aren't. That's what this energy bag is about, the other ones that aren't 1, 2, or 5. And that is generally what's called soft plastics and styrofoam. Okay, that also includes takeout plastic forks and spoons and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so if it's soft and flimsy, it's generally energy bag material, and you wouldn't want to put this in without an energy bag into the mixed stream recycling, because it'll probably just wind up in the landfill. So here's another picture to give you an example of different types of materials that are energy baggable and not recyclable through traditional means. And so that covers plastics 3, 4, 6, and 7. If you want to start using the energy bag program within your business, you can either just get 8-gallon bags available at most grocery stores and hardware stores now. If you want commercial size, there's rolls of 55-gallon and 30-gallon, which you can get directly from First Star Fiber, and there's contact info, email, and phone number on how to get that set up. All right, so just to review real quick, Hefty Energy Bag. Okay, so here's the orange bag. You could have a container like this in your place of work. You put your soft plastics in here. They have these nice little flyers that you can have printed on the can that break down the different type of materials. Things like plastic liners from powdered mixes, microwavable pouches, toothpaste tubes, food bags, frozen fruit bags, things like that. And then you just tie this up and you can put this into the mixed recycling dumpster that we have in the back for you. there's another myth that we find in the waste industry is that don't these materials, especially food waste, just break down safely in a landfill? And I've actually heard from a local chef who thought, oh, well, if my head of lettuce goes to a landfill, it probably just breaks down into dirt, no big deal. Maybe even helps break down a aluminum can while it's at it. And that's actually not how it works. So the reality is that when food waste goes to a landfill, it produces methane gas, which is way worse than CO2, a toxic sludge called leachate. So basically that water in a tomato, for example, mixes with all the other liquids in a landfill and then produces a nasty little sludge, which can get into our waterways. And then they also consume space. We want to preserve our landfills for as long as possible because we don't have to build more landfills because they're expensive and nobody wants to live next to a landfill. So all reasons why the solution, instead of putting our food waste in a landfill, we should compost it. And guess what? You have composting now as part of your package. Okay, so here's the composting stream. You'll notice in the posters in the waste corral. So what's compostable? You know, anything that's been alive once is kind of a simple way to think about it. Food scraps of all types. If you have composting at home, you probably just do vegetables and fruits. Because we have a commercial composting facility in Ashland, Nebraska, we can take any type of food. Non-recyclable paper, so those pizza boxes, because they have, which the cardboard could be recycled, but if it has food stains on it, it now should be composted. Paper napkins, paper plates. You just want to make sure there's not some kind of plastic in that material. Yard waste debris, you know, if you're a restaurant, maybe you have flowers, that's compostable. And then miscellaneous items like coffee grounds and filters and tea bags and wooden chopsticks and things of the like. Okay, and then also there's compostable serviceware, which is on the market now. As you can see from the slide, and we have all this great stuff over here. And you know, it's a bit tricky because some of the stuff looks like it's plastic, but it's actually like a corn resin. And so the way that you know that, there's a marker on the bottom that says 7PLA, and there's some other logos. But these are things you can use now as opposed to plastics. They do cost a little bit more. Larson Supply Company, based in Council Bluffs, locally owned, they distribute this stuff. We like working with them. And then, yeah, the logos you want to look for, 7PLA is an indication that it's compostable. And then those other logos that you'll see there. And then if you notice, on the sort of 1 through 7 plastics diagram, there is a 7 on there. And so that's where it's a little confusing, right? Because if it just says 7, it's most likely just a plastic. If it says 7PLA, then it's a compostable plastic, okay? So just a distinguishable feature you should be aware of. And so when you take those materials to the where the dumpsters are at, there's these green cans you'll see back here. And so this photo is an example of not what to do. Of what not to do. Don't leave the lids open because come summertime when it's warm and there's food waste in there, we want to not have a bunch of flies back there. So do yourself and your neighbors a favor by opening those up, putting the materials in there, closing the lid. And also, we don't want any plastic bags in there. You can use compostable bags if you want to go that route. You can collect your compostables in-house with a plastic bag, but just dump that in there, and then you can landfill the plastic bag. Okay, so here's another myth. No waste haulers will pick up and recycle my glass. And the good news is that is no longer the case because Hillside Solutions, we do that now. Okay, we're the only waste hauler in the area that will pick up your glass and recycle it. So the key is that you need to start using the service because it's back there. Okay, red totes, and we accept bottles and jars. We want them empty and dry. Labels, even shards, are okay. Just make sure they get into the red glass totes that we have in the back, and we'll get them recycled for you. Also, really important, it's just bottles and jars. We don't really want, fluorescent lighting, light bulbs, mirrors, ceramics, windows, Pyrex, test tubes, things like that. So just simple bottles and jars, no lids. And there's a picture of the totes that accept the glass in the back. Make sure it's just glass, no plastic bags or any other type of materials. So that's your lineup. There's 5 major categories. And then also if you include energy bag, if you institute that program inside your place of business, that's 6. So, that's a lot of materials to sort through. And, where most people just have landfill and maybe one type of recycling, that essentially means that Aksarben Village has, from my understanding, for a mixed-use development in the state of Nebraska, the most advanced sustainability program for waste management. So, so that leads me to the next point, is like, how do you get people to actually participate in this program? And so there is a myth that people don't recycle right, and so maybe it's not worth doing it. But the thing is that the recycling industry has kind of made it too difficult for the average person to know what to do, and no one really ever got taught correctly. And by you watching this, you are getting the education that you need. So the reality is that we just made it too hard, and there's an easier way. We're going to talk about that. So the solution is the implementation that we're going to go through. So how do you start this program in-house? Okay, so I think the first thing you want to do is look at your staff and delegate, who is passionate about sustainability, who loves this type of stuff, who's great at recycling already, and kind of designate them as a sustainability person and say, hey, make sure that we're all doing it right. And if we're not doing it right, bring attention to it, or contact our company, Hillside, and we'll help you out. Okay, so then after you do that, then you want to get your in-house containers down. So again, locally we use Larson Supply Company quite a bit, and they have a lot of this stuff because they work with us. But for example, if you're an office, maybe having cans this size, and so if it's a recycling stream, you want to use blue. You always want to try to match the stream that you're using, ideally to the color coordination that we have on the posters that we've been showing you. But it's hard to find an orange can in this size for the energy bag, or a red one for glass. So I would recommend special ordering a green container for composting, blue for the recycling streams, and black for landfill. And that's sort of the designated colors for those types of things. Okay, so then once you have the right containers, the right colors, you also want to get the right signage. So part of the reason why recycling is so difficult is because everybody has different signage that they use. And so there is a standard, and it's Recycle Across America puts that out. If you go to recycleacrossamerica.org, you can see a variety of different stickers, vinyl stickers that you can place on bins. And so we recommend that because the more people use this, the more people will recognize, oh yeah, I know what that is because I've seen it elsewhere, and they'll make the decision without thinking as much, and the less thinking they have to do, the better at recycling and composting people will naturally be. So here's another example, cardboard one, and whatnot. So another thing you need to consider is what bags are you using in-house? So when it comes to the composting stream, so you can use compostable bags. You can purchase those. They're more expensive. They don't hold as tight. So maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe it's easier for you to just, or cost effective, just to dump directly into whatever in-house container you use, and then take that out to our container by the dumpster, and then you just need to rinse that out if you have the capacity to do that. If you don't want to mess around with that, you can use a plastic bag too. You just take that plastic bag, dump the contents into our compost tote, and then landfill that plastic bag. So there's 3 options on that. Also, a lot of people tend to just put a recycling bin by itself somewhere, and then a landfill bin by itself somewhere else. And we always recommend, where possible, space is tight, to always put the bins together if you can, because imagine if you're walking from one side of your business to the other and you see a trash can, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go throw away this thing, but it's only the recycling, but you want to throw it away in the landfill. All of a sudden you're more likely to just put that material in the recycling, even if it's not a recyclable material, and that's how contamination happens. So it's better when they're all coupled together where possible. And then, initial employee training. And when you hire new people, perhaps you're a new hire watching this right now, always just make this a part of your onboarding for employees. And so another thing we do is we encourage people to sign a sustainability pledge. Research shows that when you make a verbal commitment, a written commitment to something, you're more likely to do it. And then that sustainability person at your place of business, they should do audits from time to time. It could just be as quick as just looking into the compost container and saying, okay, there's a bunch of plastic in here, and that's probably Jimmy because he likes to use those Slim Jims. And now I'm going to go talk to him and say, hey, bud, you're doing it wrong. You're ruining it for the rest of us. Get your act together, whatever. And that helps, just keeping things on track. Okay, so yeah, earlier I mentioned Recycle Across America. Here's a little slide of their website. You can go there, recycleacrossamerica.org/labels, and see a wide range of options for your particular needs. If you're confused on what you're supposed to get, reach out to us at hello@hillside.solutions. Here's some examples. If you were to get different containers and you're slapping those stickers on them, this is essentially how waste diversion will be happening in the future as this whole concept of zero waste catches on. It's no longer just one container, it's 4, it's 5, it's potentially 6. Here is an example of a restaurant that we work with. This is something customer facing, and they have Recycle Across America stickers to designate what each compartment's for. And then this is a picture of HDR, what they're doing, and their separation. And then Ansel's is a restaurant that actually doesn't give landfill as an option to their customers because they have all their materials into compostable or recyclable materials. So that's just kind of a cool idea if that's something you're interested in. And then, sustainability pledge. Something as easy as what's written up here, and just printing that off and having them sign like, hey, I vow to, participate in this process and be a willful player. And so then really what it comes down to is we're creating a culture of sustainability at Aksarben Village. This is now one of the keystones of what it means to be a tenant within this community. So it's something we need to share the culture, expect the culture for the people that we work with, and celebrate it. Make posts about it. Talk about it on social media. Put it on your website. Show it off to people because it's a way to be a revenue generator as well. And like I said earlier, no other mixed-use development in the state of Nebraska at the time of filming this is doing anything like this. So Aksarben Village, the folks that are using this, are essentially have the greenest waste program in the state. And that's something that should absolutely be talked about and celebrated. And then, if you need more help, if you're kind of like, we're into this is cool, how do we make this happen in our office, in our restaurant, in our bar, whatever, and how do we get 10, 20, 30, 50 employees on board, and you need more than just watching this video and reading some stuff, we're available for consultation. So hit us up. We'd love to come out and figure out your particular need. And so you can contact us at Hillside or hello@hillside.solutions, and we'd love to hear from you and help you get this thing going. So thank you very much.